Hey there, Goa fans. Mark DJ Solitaire here with episode 20 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which I present a track from the Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement of the 1990s, and I'm still working up in sequence from the 94-95 season. We will soon be moving on to more of the 95-96 season, but there's still a few tracks from this period that I really wanted to cover. I know there's always going to be something left out, but this one I could not ignore because it was one of the opening tracks in that amazing mixtape that Jay, the American DJ who was running the Odyssey parties in Tokyo, that formed part of my, major part of my formation, as they would say in some European languages, my training in my first years in the scene. And that track is Aquaspace by Prana, who's known as Taiyo, on this Step 2 House EP. Now, just like we looked at, I think the last time I spoke about Prana, and also last time rather, that I mentioned Transwave, with their Step to House EP. It's an album. I mean, come on, there's 7 tracks here, so I don't know what they were expecting for an album, if this is considered an EP, but there we go. I misspoke when I did the Prana video, thinking that these Taiyo tracks were before the Prana tracks, and that's why they were using the name Taiyo, but it was actually using a different project name for the different label. And that's something that would start to happen later on with Total Eclipse, for example. The Antidote, even though that later became Serge's solo project, was originally used by the band after they'd signed to Blue Room so that they could release on other labels, notably Tip. So Taiyo was basically just Prana releasing on Step 2 House, whereas on Inter 1, before they started releasing their own music on Tsushi's soon-to-be founded Matsuri Productions, on Inter 1 they were known as Prana. So, all that as preamble, Aquaspace is an absolutely mind-blowing track. Beautiful, slow pacing, 134 BPM, and just gorgeous. And Jay worked it into his opening flow magnificently. I reached out to Nick and Tsuyoshi, the Prana Generation 1 musicians from around the time that this was being done, prior to Andy Guthrie joining the project in 95-96 after Nick went to Australia. And Nick told me something I didn't know until now, which is that this was actually a solo track that he produced. It was done in 94. At this point, Tsuyoshi was starting to get more gigs, and he was away for the weekend, and this was the first time that Nick was kind of left alone in the studio that was at Tsuyoshi's place, Tsuyoshi and Veronica's place in Gypsy Hill in London. And he didn't really have a plan when he started the track, didn't know where he was going to go, but using the Korg Monopoly got this opening watery sound, and he said everything just kind of flowed from there. And so, Tsuyoshi came back from a gig and the track was basically done, right? Took him a day or two. Real masterpiece. There is a lot, as always, going on in this track. Something that I love is the organic structuring. This is something I've spoken to before. There's still always the reality of 8-bar sections of how things move, but the way there's this long storyline. It's so logical, but it's not micromanaged in terms of structure. The way things come in and go out, and familiar voices come back. But the whole storyline is absolutely incredible. So this is just, this track is a masterpiece. And don't get to play it out often enough, because how do you get to play 134 BPM? right? 130 BPM though, we've heard, right? But this somehow feels almost slower than some of these 130 BPM tracks, like, you know, Thousand Planets and New Moon and some of those, you know, ones from that Dragonfly compilation. So I find that really interesting, just what creates the feeling of momentum, and in this case, of spaciousness. So let's get started listening to this track. It is a long one, longer than average for this time, 9 minutes, 16 seconds. And nothing about it feels long. I mean, it's just that gorgeous eternity of the present moment, and just such a beautiful track. So here we go. Again, that beautiful watery sound, just like some water dripping. Notice this little feature. And then percussion starts to come in. And that offbeat, kind of a very German sort of thing, right? Extreme would start doing this a lot. But obviously, not just them alone. It's that beautiful heart level kick. Just that offbeat syncopation while all this other stuff is going on. Then it slowly starts, the sound starts winding up. This is the sort of stuff that absolutely you just ride along once you get used to what you've been listening to, and this new thing comes in and just lifts everything. And lasery sounds, and this sinewy, sensual line, really seductive. And with that atonal stuff going on above that, a little bit of extra rhythm coming in there. Just love the way that watery sound gets a bit louder occasionally. See how many layers are going on here. This is like a counterpoint to what just happened. A bit of the Morse code kind of thing, and then it just sounds like getting into those harmonic patterns, right? Like these little equation or algorithm kind of waveform language pieces. Sounds like a whole other musical language. Then more voices. And on the next round, there's another little voice that's going to come in. All these interdimensional beings communicating. This does not sound like, other than the water, none of this sounds like it's from this planet. Pulls back while this continues. And then one of the main riffs. It's 3 simple notes. Going into a bit more detail. The transparency, the way they all interplay together. That higher sort of. And now it goes up instead. And then And like all these rhythmic points, kind of cool. Well, I don't know what, musical coconuts. And then it's kind of like rubbery thing over here. There's that ascending line here. And notice all the different layers, like levels, in terms of the frequencies. There's that gnarly, and that releases, and all this other stuff comes out. Bit of Prana line, this one over here, right? What's going on? That comes back. Really missing these days that kind of really spacey sound, right? Like those laser kind of science fiction sounds. Again, this, very earthy, like the water sounds earthy. Maybe the chicka chicka stuff as well, but then everything else just is so ethereal. So I guess hence Aquaspace. Love, the consistency of some of these lines, and then these other things just interject and show up. Kind of a cool growly sound there. So hypnotic, isn't it? And just really trance-inducing, since we hear these things going on for quite a while, and the structure changing. Kick dropped out, and that comes back. Just that beautiful, like, chorus. Voices and all these levels just really, really works. So kind of almost like this almost sounds reversed, a bit like we had in binary Prana. Goes to that upper note again, that chorus line. Ooh, and now it comes back. Right, so all these sounds that we've heard before is making this reappearance again of each one. Imagine each one like a being, right? They're all coming in and chiming in, making an appearance. Now, we can start winding down. I mean, what a masterpiece, what a journey, right? So many beautiful melodies, right? Things that are hummable, things that are fluid, right? Legato is the classical term for that, right? When something has flow and is fluid as opposed to separated, then there's those other separated bits, right? Which can add rhythm, adds this kind of Morse code, like almost like messaging effect. Like there's some kind of code we're listening to, which, it's really the sense that we had back in the day when we were first exposed to this. Definitely a lot of people spoke to that. And it's just beautiful. And the storyline is evocative. The whole track is just brilliant. Love to play this out sometime if the timing works. I have played it before, but this was back in the 90s. Just a genius track that I think everybody needs to go back and hear again. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that when I sign off. I'm going to present the whole track without my talking over it, so you can really appreciate all those magnificent subtleties that Nick Taylor worked into this. I'll just note that the CD did say all tracks written and produced by Tsuyoshi and Nick, except some other collaborative ones on there. And, that was often done when there were projects. They didn't necessarily say who did which one. Sometimes they were all credited for some of them. Back in the days, sometimes folks who just showed up, sat on the sofa, and provided atmospheric support in some form or another also sometimes got credited. That we know Tsuyoshi and Nick were working a lot. And what a fantastic first experience of Nick in the studio alone we have in this masterpiece track. So I will sign off now. Mark, DJ Solitaire here, to leave you with the masterful track Aquaspace by Prana, aka Taiyo.